So, firstly, I think we've done a great job. And when we're organizing the business, we're really focused on organizing our ability to deliver against it. So when we're communicating it to our investors, we have a high degree of confidence that we can deliver from a production standpoint, but also in the field with the customer. With that said, it's not easy, right? It's not easy to go from development to operational. And we've had to work really hard. So that means the team is under a lot of pressure, but they've been delivering. I'd say, if I kind of extend it a bit and think, a little bit more strategically and tactically, moving into the U.S. market is a challenge, right? It has been a challenge. So because you have to localize supply chains here, you have to build your pipeline, and these are systems that you don't just show up and say, hey, you'll put them on the shelf, and the customer goes shopping and says, hey, I'll take that, right? It's not fast-moving consumer goods. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get the pipeline. It means you have to be in the field with customers. That creates other operational challenges around getting equipment here. And that was particularly true when we were constrained from a capital standpoint, right? Because we had to make choices and priorities. So if I go back, I'll say 18 months ago, a lot of those decisions around what we're doing were focused on making sure we can validate operational, the systems were reliable, right? Working to customer requirements. And that was a lot of energy and focus. And then, of course, servicing those initial customers, and that being the IDF and a handful of others. So now, as we transition to the U.S. And really looking to build a business here, we've been putting in the work, right? But that's been a challenge tactically to do it, just as you would expect. I'll talk about a few, but it's not limited, and there's a bunch of folks that we're engaging with increasingly. So I think you're going to see our ecosystem expand quite a bit over the 26 and into 27, and that's kind of be a perpetual thing. We're a collaborative company, but some of the most important partnerships we have now, as you know, and we talked about earlier, was the Mistral relationship, which is sales and marketing. They've actually provided some support for us on the production side as well, particularly with RoboTeam. We've developed a relationship with Detroit Manufacturing, also known as DMS, and out of Detroit. And they're a very capable producer, with industrial and we'll call it even vehicles and subsystems. So an Optimus and Iron Drone and things like docking stations, we find them to be a great partner, and I think that's going to only grow. Kitron is another good example. Kitron's building the Wasp, which is our strike drone, and we're partnered with Rift Dynamics out of Norway. And it's really, actually, when I think about that, I'd like to add that, third-party manufacturing is an approach we've been taking. It's not going to be limited to that. So as we're scaling, you're going to see some internal activities, and that includes American Robotics, building drones and fiber optic spools, for example, which we're doing now. But it's going to be a mixture. But I think emphasizing the contract manufacturers is actually is sort of very consistent with where the Department of War wants to see industry go. Now, having your own vertically integrated factory is valuable, and certainly we want to see people do that. At the same time, we also need to get scale efficiencies, and that's exactly what the contract manufacturer business model is. So what I've seen is that from Ondas, particularly as we built our portfolio, I'm getting more and more inbound interest from large contract manufacturers. So we had in our last deck, we had logos that you didn't see before, like Flextronics, for example. We have others like that, Scale, who are calling us up and saying, hey, listen, we want to engage in this reindustrialization of America. This is what we do. We know the Department of War needs players like us. But the problem is when we want to build drones for somebody or any of these defense technologies, we have to interface with Series A funded companies that aren't well funded. They don't have operational systems at the TRL level they need to be, and they don't have a balance sheet, right? And they only have a single product, a single customer. It's very hard for them to devote their resources because the contract manufacturing model is all about thin margins, right? The inefficiencies. So when we're coming now with a portfolio, I'm seeing increased interest from real serious, capable supply chain partners, manufacturing partners who want to work with us. And I only think that's going to get stronger and stronger. So that's what it looks like today. I mean, Detroit manufacturing and Kitron are important. Some of the internal work we're doing is important. But you're going to see us, build that capability into a very serious strength. So I don't think we've looked at 3D systems specifically, although 3D printing is part of our manufacturing process in certain places for sure. But we haven't, with some context, when you're going to someone like that, I believe that's when you're going to be building many thousands, in volumes where you want to outsource that. Now we're of course going to get there, but I'll leave that to Kitron how they do it. Kitron can play a similar role, for example, on the WASP. If we're 3D printing, we might do injection molding too, right? So these are things that RIP Dynamics has been working on, and that's all depending on how big our orders are and sort of and where we are in that cycle of growth. In the aero platforms, we have dock solutions like the Optimus system and like Iron Drone. The Optimus dock is very complex, as you said. So essentially, we have we ask our manufacturing partners to build the whole thing, and they, my team can speak to this better than I can, but I do believe that there's sub-assemblies. So, for example, in the Optimus, the robotic arm, I think we can, we'll take that from a different partner. So there's a bit of an assembly, but it's much more than that when you think about the level of sophistication it is to build the Optimus dock. The Iron Drone pod, we call it a pod. It's a much simpler mousetrap. So it is more of an assembly responsibility. And the individual drones themselves are a bunch of components you're putting together and assembling really. So we bring the components in to do that. And that's a place where you can see us at Aerobotics and at American Robotics doing in smaller batches internally. And of course, when we're doing volumes like we're doing now with the WASP, and we're going to do with these other systems like Iron Drone, we'll be using third parties in all likelihood. There'll be a point where, on that front, we're probably going to take it in-house, at least part of it. The benefits of having the internal and external manufacturing are not necessarily well appreciated, so maybe I'll just spend a brief moment talking about that. So, in our markets, when we're specifically thinking about defense and homeland security, there's a structural demand for what we do and what our peers do in the industry. You want to fill inventory, you want to refresh product cycles with new technologies, you want to have systems out for training. Of course, in times of conflict, it's a different animal. You need surge capacity. And I think if we have an industry, and us as part of the industry have a capability to do a certain amount internally, we actually have to keep feeding that third party group and making them able, so they can be able to react to surge capacity. Because we can't keep, surge capacity, you might need 5x what you're building in a normalized environment. And it's not necessarily just about the warehouse or even the equipment to build it, it's the labor, right? So to be able to respond to labor. So I think that element of contract manufacturing is going to be critical. And I know the Department of War is very, very concerned about that. They want their vendors to have that flexibility to flex and have surge. And if you're just building your own through your own facilities, it's much harder to do that flex. It's a perfect question because it is the biggest risk. But if I'll take a step back and I'll just say that that's kind of a known risk, right? It's we do know that the supply chain is a challenge, right? It's a bottleneck of source because over the last 25 years it's been hollowed out. We've outsourced that to China. They did the same thing in Europe, of course, right? They deindustrialized Europe. Well, now the policy is very focused on reindustrializing. And the point is, this is a process. We don't have to build millions and millions of drones tomorrow. What we have to do is get on a path to be able to do it at least a few years out. And I think what our strategy is, and we're not the only ones to do this, right? We've talked about need to be a scaled provider of these systems, right? Developing it, having exceptional technology is a requirement, but it's not sufficient. You have to put the operating side of the business together. And as we're doing that, others are going to do it. These are market forces, but policy, like the Drone Dominance Program is a brilliant example of them saying, hey, there's a cottage industry here. This is all great. We know you're patriotic. We know you're engineering and doing cool things. You're not doing it at industrial scale. You're not useful to us unless you can do it at industrial scale. And there's, when you sort of, fast forward, that means you have to have a few suppliers. And that's going to be that you're going to see similar dynamics in most of the systems, whether they're counter drone, strike drones, maybe longer endurance, ISR, the ground vehicles. You're going to see that same pressure because we need to be able to deliver at scale at the right cost. So the point is, as you start to consolidate the vendors, then those big contract manufacturers can interface in a much more efficient, cost-effective way, and that becomes a virtuous cycle in and of itself. So we're in a market where all of the aspects of our businesses are flywheels in a sense, as we're transitioning from developing the technologies to delivering them. And there's a lot of, I've seen a lot of investment cycles, and the capital is going to be there. I know because we're demonstrating that investors want to invest in this cycle. They're mission driven, but there's profit incentive, and there's a lot of money to be made reindustrializing America, which is a good thing. For sure they are, and we have a bunch of partnerships. One we've announced recently, which is a very exciting one, is Heidelberg. And Heidelberg's a great example now. The story has been well reported. I mean, Germany has, the policies and the macroeconomics have driven everything from Germany to China, right? Their auto industry is under a lot of pressure, just like ours is and other industries. And at the same time, the Europeans, have been through a long period of time of relying on U.S. and for defense and security. And that's clearly changed. And that changed about 12 months ago when J.D. Vance went to the Munich Security Conference. And it was really a demarcation line, and everything's different. Initially, the Europeans were pushing back on this, but very quickly they realized the benefits of resiliency, which is actually very bullish for their economy. They can reindustrialize. And they're doing that. So you're seeing, Heidelberg is a wonderful company. They're in they build big systems, complex systems, primarily around printing machinery. And they're the best. And it's a big business. I think they got a couple $2 billion in revenue, employ a lot of people. They're global. So they know how to build stuff. But they're also looking at the national service they can do, and this imperative to say, hey, in reindustrializing, protecting the country of of Germany, but also greater Europe is something worth doing. So they want to do it. So they're going to work with us. We're going to bring systems. They're going to be able to build them. They're going to help us sell and distribute and service the systems. And I think we can bring other partners in, either there or elsewhere. So I think it's very exciting. And the imperative in Europe that not just for Ondas, but all American producers of defense technology is you have to localize. And that's not easy. And I think we figured out business and operating models to do it. So you're going to hear more about Heidelberg as we've told you you would. So stay tuned. The short answer is yes, but I don't want to set any expectations. We'll have to see. But I think they are relevant. If I had to say, the LiDAR sensor vis-a-vis batteries, I think at the moment, if we were going to be supportive of the ecosystem, I think the battery vertical is actually becoming more interesting because we do have to localize that capability here. We have to bring scale to it. But that's just the way I think about it. I have nothing to announce on that front, but it's interesting. And what you see us do, if we're not making control investments or acquisitions, we do find benefits of. So firstly, if we can find a related part of our ecosystem that we can invest in, if we think we can be financially rewarded, that's a good reason to do it. But as important, if not more important, making a financial return is a requirement. But ideally, what we're also focusing on and be able to leverage is helping identify leaders throughout the ecosystem for other investors, because we're subject matter experts. I say we, I'm talking about my team, which is exceptional, right? They're technology experts, they're market experts, they're systems integration experts, they're customer use case experts, and so forth. So we think we do a pretty good job of understanding the valuable technologies and leadership teams that are critical to our ecosystem growing, because that has to support companies like us as we get big. And if we can invest and then co-invest, bring other investors into these situations, that company becomes becomes stronger, and as a tide, they help us rise the tide, right, or raise the tide. So that's sort of the thought process when we think about these products. You're right. I'm 24/7, and so when you're a global investor, money never sleeps. But my business never sleeps because security never sleeps, right? So I guess that's my orientation. But as an investor, you're in the information game. So you're just taking, this is you, right? You take in the information. One of the biggest, most important parts of your job is to make sure you're filtering out the information that's not useful, right? But so because this is so encompassing, I don't really have the luxury of sort of thinking about my personal account. But so most of the things I'm interested in this seat, prior to founding Ondas and getting this plan and all this incredible management team together and these investors to support us, I was not a technology expert. I was more of a macro thinker. I would invest around investment themes and cycles. Today, I at least if I pull my investor hat, the sort of perspective I have on technologies and how they can be made valuable for markets, customers, and investors. It's really it's a powerful set of learnings, and it'd be great to be able to deploy them. And I see some things, but I can't become an expert in them because I have to do this. None of the failures are funny. I wish they were. I mean, if you look back and there's some certainly some crazy things, but you have to understand, like this, when we talk about deep technology, is all hard work. And so the amount of literal blood, sweat, and tears and personal sacrifice to get something to the point we are today, the failures you have, and you're right, there are a lot, it's hard to communicate what that disappointment is, right? Because of that level of energy we put into it. At the same time, that makes the successes all the more gratifying because the road is not an easy one. So, I guess that's the way I would frame it is that, what do you learn? Well, you learn a lot because failure is important, right? And, you want to also always push your technologies and capabilities to the edge so you understand what your limits are. You're also testing yourselves in real world environments because at the end of the day, customers have to have that. So you're going to fail, and it's actually part of the process. But each one is really, really disappointing. So there's a lot out there. I do hear about them, and in this environment, I hear about even more. And so I think about heavy lift and long endurance, right? Logistics type stuff. I think some of the longer endurance stuff is still, it's orders of magnitude more complex. There's regulatory challenges that has to be, solved for. But I think there's reason to be optimistic. You'll see more of that stuff mature and be operational. I think like a lot of these things, there's these are dual use when you think about heavy lift and logistics. But there's an imperative now for military homeland security type of use cases for them to become, operational. And I think that's going to accelerate that activity. I'd also add that you probably, maybe it might be a language and communication thing, but you're starting to see maybe mid-sized drones, maybe not exactly what we're talking about, but this mothership concept where you've got a drone that can carry payloads. And the payloads might be supplies. It could be gravity bombs. It could be other drones, right? That a bigger, say quadcopter or fixed wing will go into the battle, and then the smaller drones that just don't have the same endurance because they don't have the same size. They can't carry the battery, but then they're more tactical, strike or swarming. They come off the mothership. I think you're going to see those technologies develop and become more visible to the public over the next 12, 24 months because they're there. Operationally, it is a challenge, so that's where the ground vehicles become very relevant. So yeah, I think what we've really done in our industry, and I think we can say that's successful now, is we've matured the technology stack around the basic technology stack, and even more than basic around unmanned and autonomy. Now it's going to continue to evolve, and we're always going to try to make the drones fly faster and be more productive. But the core is there. And now you're starting to see extensions of the core, and that's the mothership is one extension, the ground vehicle is another extension of the core, and how you integrate them from a system standpoint is where things get really interesting, and that's again feeding into why we do this, why we've communicated the vision we have. It's all about this is the next evolution, and it's very valuable. It's valuable for customers.